Today, we're turning back the clock almost 30 years to look at one of the cool, forgotten card releases of the 90s, the 1996-97 McDonald's Pinnacle 3D set. The 1996-97 McDonald's Pinnacle hockey card set was released in 1996. The set is generally considered a 40-card release, split across 3 themed subsets, and was available in McDonald's restaurants across Canada. The set is split into 3 themed subsets, and as you can see here, I've split up my cards into the 3 different themed subsets as well. And while I don't have all of the cards in the collection, I have enough to at least give you a little sense of what the collection was like if you've never seen it before. So as I mentioned, it's split into 3 different subsets. The first is the Icebreakers, which featured some of the top NHL players. And as you can see here, this would be the top row right here. So I have a Steve Yzerman right here. And you can see these ones, it wasn't the full 3D motion, it was more just showing a little bit of depth and a bit of movement in the background. And then I also have the Joe Sakic. Again, I was a big fan of Joe Sakic. You can see they had a little bit of depth. And then also the Alexander McGillney, now a Hockey Hall of Famer. There you go, just a little bit of movement. And then we also have a Doug Weight right there, and you can see just a little bit of sense of motion, and that's what the back of the Icebreakers cards looked like right there. It would be the same across the other ones in the same subset, just with the different information. Next, we'd have the Premier Icebreakers, which showcased short, roughly 3-second motion highlights from a selection of the league's best players. This would be the bottom row right here. As you can see here, if you would tilt it, you get a little bit of movement. Actually, these ones you gotta tilt vertically. But this one right here, you can see right there, this one is a Pavel Bure, just like the other one at the top, but the only difference is the Premier added to the top of the Icebreakers. But as you can see here, Pavel Bure scoring a goal there, diving in. And the next, I have the Mario Lemieux right here. You can see it was just really cool to get that sense of motion there for its time. And then we have a Peter Forsberg right here again. You see when you tilt them, you get that sense of motion that's really, really cool. And then lastly, we have the Paul Kariya again, just these short little clips. It says 3 seconds, but I think 3 seconds might be generous when you look up the information on these sets, but they're still very, very cool. And then lastly, that would leave our Caged Icebreaker set right here, which is more similar to the Icebreakers in the sense where it's not the full 3D motion, but it still has a little bit of 3D depth there. When you tilt it, you can see the puck move a little bit there in the bottom right corner, and the background moves a little bit. But that one there is Trevor Kidd, and then there also is a Curtis Joseph. You can see similar effect there, just with the cage, and then there's also Jim Carrey. And like I mentioned, this set's generally considered to be about 40 cards, so this is by no means the entire collection, but it's enough to get a sense of what it is. So, Pinnacle marketed these as 3D and full motion cards, which sounds wild, but it's really just lenticular printing creating the illusion of movement. It's not an actual video, obviously, as you can tell, since that just isn't a thing, but it still had that cool sense of movement. That might not seem too crazy or too advanced nowadays, however, for hockey cards in the mid-90s, this was still incredibly advanced. This also wasn't Pinnacle's first time doing something like this. They actually released a similar McDonald's set the year before. I just don't own any of those cards, so I couldn't really showcase them for this one. The Pinnacle 3D hockey cards that were released in the mid-90s are widely considered among the first true lenticular 3D hockey cards. Other manufacturers produced some cool effects in the early 90s, however, from what I could find is that they were more of the shiny hologram insert style rather than the lenticular type. If there did happen to be any other manufacturers that did make the style of 3D hockey cards with the lenticular effect before Pinnacle, feel free to let me know because I'd love to check them out. Now, I've mentioned lenticular a few times here, and for those that don't know what it is, I'll touch on it briefly at a high level just to give you a bit of an idea of what it is. So, lenticular printing is a type of technology that uses a special type of plastic lens sheet with tiny ridges known as lenticules. So, you can actually see when you take a look here, let's see if I can get it to show up on the camera. It might not really show, but there's tiny little edges on the paper. If you can hear that sound, those are the tiny little edges that they're talking about that make that sound. It's not a completely smooth surface. These tiny ridges create images that give a sense of motion, 3D depth, or morph between different images as you change your viewing angle using techniques like interlacing multiple images. So as you can see, when we change our viewing angle of the card, that's why we get that sense of like a video or movement. The different angle is changing the image we're seeing on the card, which is really cool, especially for the time. So like I mentioned, depending on what angle you are looking at the card from, the image you'll see on the card will change. If you went to elementary school in the early 2000s, you may have had a school agenda that used the same technology on the cover. There's obviously a lot more that goes into lenticular technology than just what I've said here, so if you are interested in learning more about it, feel free to look it up for yourself because it is pretty cool this type of stuff it could do, especially for its time. What I love about these cards is that for their time, they seem so advanced. And that's because they were. When I got these cards, I remember spending so much time looking at them and being mesmerized because for the longest time, I always thought of cards as just being flat, static images. So to see cards that had actual highlights in them was incredible. As a kid, I remember trying to see if I tilted the card just a slight bit more, that maybe I could get just a little bit more of that highlight. Like if I tilted it just a tiny bit further, maybe I'd see a little bit more of the highlight. But obviously that's not possible because as we touched with the lenticular technology, it's just preset images based on the viewing angle. But as a kid, you don't know that, and you just want to see as much as you could. So where things stand present day with these lenticular type of hockey cards, like the McDonald's Pinnacle 3D set, you do still see some cards that use the same sort of 3D effect, like some Tim Hortons cards, some Tim Hortons inserts use lenticular technology, as well as some other manufacturers as well, like Upper Deck, I believe, also has multiple types as well, which is really cool to see, because while it's not as wow crazy technology as it used to be back in the 90s, I personally still find it really cool to see some of these 3D motion type cards. So if you do find these cards to be quite cool and interesting, and if you were curious about picking some up for yourself, they typically run around $30 for a full set. That's what I've seen them be listed for. So they're more of a nostalgia piece rather than an investment card, so you wouldn't have to set yourself back too much if you were curious about picking up the full set. But that's going to do it for today's video. Did you prefer cards like this, or do you like how the modern cards are done today? If you have any suggestions for type of content you'd like to see in the future, leave some comments down below. Until next time, I hope you all stay happy and healthy. Goodbye.